this one, the C80, and also this one, the C50. If you're someone who's been looking at cameras for the last, I don't know, 5 years and saying, I don't want to buy a Sony, Canon finally came up with something. And it was well needed. Most of the people who are working in our industry are using Sony cameras. Today I've got a shoot and I'm using a Sony a7 IV. I'm gonna do some slow-mo, gonna do an interview, gonna grab a photo, and there we go. Client's gonna be happy. It's about 2 hours worth of work, plus upload, prep time, so there is a half day, a little over a half day of work. And the whole object of these cameras is to make it possible for you to go do jobs like that. The problem was Canon couldn't do it. And let me tell you why. Number one, they'd overheat like crazy, like stupidly overheat. Number two, they didn't have a robust codecs. So for example, I'm using the a7 IV and I will be able to, hold on just a second, that just doesn't look good. That's much better. I will be able to use S-Log3. Now, I've been able to use S-Log3 all the way through my cameras for a long, long time. And that's from like a $1,400 camera all the way up to like a $5,000 camera that we take out to shoot with. Canon has always given you their Log3, not their Log2 in their non-cinema cameras. So now they've finally made a couple of cameras that can give you the S-Log3 in the non-cinema cameras. I mean, the C70 was a start, but it wasn't a full frame. And that was the other thing too, like you didn't have a full frame. This is beautiful, it's full frame. This is beautiful, it's full frame. This is what you used to have to compete against all the time. FX3, full frame. And this, since this photo didn't go too great on that, that is the FX6, because we can tell by the handle. All of these cameras are industry standard cameras. Well, at least the FX3 and the FX6 is. And Canon didn't have one that really got you there. They tried with the Canon R5, and it did a pretty good job, but it wasn't the tier of an FX series. But they tried to compete with it. They also tried with the 5RC. Now that was the first camera they came up with that was really almost there going against the FX3, except for it failed in one spot. If you happen to have C-Log and it's C-Log 3, you lost dynamic range. Well, Canon gave you a reduced log. Sony, when you look at one of their FX3s, they gave you full S-Log3, which meant you had the most dynamic range, the most color to work with, the most you could do with anything. Now, I don't know why Canon took this long in the journey, and I really don't know why they released a camera that really could have competed against this one and actually dominated against it. The Canon 5RC had a fan in it, full HDMI, actually had a faster, a cheaper fast card that you could get with a Type B card, and a ton of people who love Canons. And when it was released, they hampered the log, which is what a lot of us shoot in when we're turning in materials to our clients. And if you've ever been shooting in Canon Log 3 instead of Canon Log 2, you're like, oh man, this is really hard to pull out all the color, pull out all the shadows. Whereas with the S-Log 3, do you know how many flavors of LUTs you can throw in an S-Log 3? I mean, we have 3 million styles of LUTs you can throw on it because we get the full dynamic range and we get the ability to shoot with the full capability of that sensor. Now introduced to the C50. 5 years later, and 3 years after dropping the 5RC, they finally give us a camera. Now there are some limitations, just so you guys know. You do not get any shutter on it, but it's the same as the FX3. So without the shutter, there's no flash. So you've got to make sure that you're using your constant lights to get that lighting for the flash, or lighting for the scene for your thumbnail photo. Other than that, this has all the codecs in it. It has an all intro codecs. It has all of the buttons, including the zoom rocker on it, a bigger screen, has the capabilities on it. This is what Canon should have released about 3 years ago. And I don't know why they didn't release it then. They are doing electronic stabilization in it, which I don't have any problem with. Gyro data has been pretty normal down the road for us for a long, long time. Hi, how you doing there? Appreciate you subbing. Yeah, I can say hi to Skylar. Hi, Skylar. And this is the camera that, Jesus, thank you for subscribing. This is the camera that Canon should have brought out. Or they should have put some of the guts of this camera in the 5RC, especially Canon C-Log2. And had they put Canon C-Log2 and the 5RC, they wouldn't have lost as many people to Sony. You know how many people I shoot with on a daily basis who are like, man, I wish Canon didn't hamper the 5RC because I wouldn't have bought an FX3? The FX3 is a beast, but that sensor's getting old. I mean, let's be real about it. It's a 12 megapixel sensor that does really, really awesome, but is lacking in some of the nuances that we have right now. We're used to chroma sampling down from 7K sensors to 4K. So the sharpness is there. You're actually seeing what a regular 4K would look like instead of seeing a 7K that's been downsampled, which gives you more detail. And that's one of the things that Sony does very well. Canon does it too. The unfortunate fact about Canon is the heat problem they have. They're just not as good at dissipating heat. That's why they had to go to a much bigger body. I'm absolutely uncertain what Sony's doing right now to dissipate heat the way they're dissipating heat, but they're doing with the A7 V, something that the Canon R6 III can't do. Now, this C50 can do because they put a better cooling system in it. They have put a better fan system in it. They have made sure that they're not running with two high-speed cards. That's one thing Canon figured out. They can't run two high-speed cards, but they can run a high-speed SD card and a high-speed Type B card, which is really cool. That being said, too, a lot of the Canon shooters are going to start running into the things that Sony shooters ran into when they got into the FX series. It's memory. Now, Sony made a choice that Canon did make, and I think Canon made a better choice here, but Sony also may have made a better choice. Sony and Canon both went with an all-intra flavor. Canon went with a raw light and a raw in these cameras. And I think that's really awesome. It is something that takes on Nikon, that takes on Red, that it really does put it in that next level cinema over the FX series, because the FX series really doesn't have a RAW. They do have a RAW through an external recorder. It also means you got to take on heat problems. It also means you've got to take on memory issues. Now, this is where this conversation is going to change a little bit. So everybody who's buying these cameras, so if you're buying the C50, or if you are buying, let's see, pull this up here again. If you are buying the C80 or the C50, you're gonna have to get used to memory. Now, you're gonna have to start buying 8 terabyte drives. You're gonna start buying 20 terabyte drives, because if you may not know this, an hour of footage in RAW on Canon RAW is gonna look great, but it's gonna be a terabyte. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever had to deal with a terabyte of data on a single shoot. You're gonna have to deal with it here, but it's gonna be some of the best footage you will ever see. Canon Log 3, and that will be gorgeous. Now, lenses too. Here's another thing. Canon makes their cinema lenses. And now that they can put their RF cinema lenses onto this, sky's the limit. They also have open gate, and they have a better open gate than Lumix does, which is really one of the things I like. Canon C50 and Canon C80 have a better open gate. And for those who are looking at open gate going, this is the way I want to go with Canon on that. So what? I don't mind talking to nobody. I'm having fun with this. A lot of times I do these presentations to people who are asking me questions on site, which is cool. So being able to see myself and actually practice and see the body language is actually pretty cool. If I put it out here on this, even better. At points, I'll have like 15, 20 people jump in. At points, it'll drop down to nothing. So essentially, all right, Speed. Essentially, what comes with these is the ability to stick within a whole ecosystem that's going to be absolutely fabulous. I mean, you're going to be looking at, thank you for the like, you're going to be looking at from lens to body, a complete package in the cinema side. And Sony can't provide that, by the way. Just so you guys know, Sony does not have that glass at all. Now they partnered with Zeiss in the past, and they have taken a lot of Zeiss's glass stuff, but they don't have updated cinema lenses, and it sucks. So the real thing comes to this. Canon launched the C50 and the C80 5 years after the Sony, and actually came up with a contender that can pretty much whoop Sony's ass. And this is from a Sony shooter. So I'm hoping next year that Sony finally drops their bomb, because if you've been paying attention to Sony at all, they just signed a huge agreement with sports, which means it jumped out Canon. They knocked Canon out of a spot they had, which was in the motocross, NFL, a whole bunch of other areas. So Canon had to find a way to get more people back in the bucket, and that's the C50 and C80 does for them 5 years later, which it should have launched earlier. Whereas the FX series has shown to the NFL how good the image can be and how it can be transmitted on television at 4K with their transmitter systems. They're already happy with that. They're happy with what you can do with the FX6. Now they've signed a huge contract because of that work to be Sony to provide video for most of what they're doing. And Sony has dropped their global shutters, which Canon, thank you C50s and C80s, are going to force Sony to actually release their global shutters in their larger formats, because they're doing 1-inch format right now. And the way it's going to work is Sony's going to have a 1-inch sensor version that's going to be released probably to the prosumer line in about a year. They already have it released in the Pro lines, and I do mean like a $66,000 Super 35 global shutter. I want this stupid shutter, and that's a Super 35. See, this is the thing, like with Canon, this launch may have just made it possible for us to get this Super 35 global shutter. And I hope it does, because Sony launched this, and they launched it earlier this year. I wish they put it in like an FX30 type body, because I would pay 10 grand for this. It's ridiculous. This sensor is global shutter, not this Canon one. And because Canon just dropped the C50 and the C80, we're all going to benefit from this. For those who shoot for Canon, they're just going to have a magnificent set of cameras that we get for the next 7 to 10 years, just like the C70 is a good camera. But this also means that this 5-year-old, 6-year-old sensor coming from Sony, which was in, let's pull up the camera that we're in, which was in this camera, the FX3, will go away to a global shutter. And if that happens, man, it's going to be magnificent. It's going to be superb. We're going to have like the coolest setups, and it's going to blur the lines. Now, part of the reason why Sony probably won't release this right away, probably will wait another 2 years or 3 years. They're going to wait for all of these companies to buy these $66,000 shoulder cam for broadcast that has a global shutter on it. And I'd love to have one of those. Grow this production company big enough? Oh yeah, have a couple of them just to prove a point. You know, that's after we get houses and other stuff. But yeah, man, we're in like the coolest world ever. And it's basically because these two companies are competing for everything. Now I have to admit, Canon's done a great job with these two cameras, the C50 and the C80, and having an ecosystem to themselves. Now, what they haven't done, I think it's going to come, is the R6 III, the R8, and the R5, plus the R3, plus the R1, will all get Canon Log 2. They have to. And they will all get an all-intra flavor. They have to, because Sony, the FX3, FX30, ZV-10 Mark II, 6700, A7 V, A7 IV, A7 R5, A9 2 and 3, and A1 all have an all-intra 4K 60. And if I think these cameras here with their 4K 60 and their open gate are gonna bleed down to the lower cameras, because they're gonna want to have ecosystem going all the way up, because you don't want somebody learning how to use Canon Log 3 and then switching to Canon Log 2. Workflow is completely different. And that's part of the reason why Sony got rid of S-Log 2 completely. Like, we don't have access to S-Log 2 anymore. Like, you have to build your own picture profile in S-Log 2. It's no longer available. And Canon's going to have to do the same thing if they're going to keep an ecosystem of people going all the way up to their commercial line. And I think that's where Canon wants to go. And the launch of these two cameras is showing that. Because before, they would segment out their cameras from the C50, and not allow their C series and their R series to have similar video codexes. And now I think they're going to really do it. I think this year forced Canon to do it, because if they didn't, when Sony does its next release, they'd have nowhere to go. They would lose out completely. And I'm super happy they did this, because I got friends who are really interested in moving into the cinema level or video first level cameras, and they were this close to pulling the trigger on FX6s, FX3s. Matter of fact, one of them did. They bought 5 for the company, 6 Sony cameras, and they bought 2 FX3s and 4 FX6s. Had these cameras had been out and workhorse tested a few years ago, they would have went this route, because the gentleman who's their advisor, a good friend of mine, loves his Canon. He has an R5 and he loves it. But when he came down to it, he was like, I need this to be in the studio. I need to be able to workhorse this every single day. I need this to never fail. And I need to be able to take it outside, and I need to have all the codexes match, and even match with some of the cameras I have that other people are coming in with, like the Sonys. Had to go with the FX series. That S-Log 3 and that ability to run these cameras for 8 and 10 hours straight without them dying was super important. This new camera can do it. This new one can do it. I hate to say this, the C70 couldn't. Now, for those who've had the C70s, you're going to be upset with me, but let me talk to you for a second. We've had the umbrella C70s multiple times in the sunlight. I have never once umbrellaed an FX series camera. Never once. And this is in 95-degree weather, sunny, didn't matter. Didn't have to put anything over them. I've even had to umbrella the Blackmagic cameras too. Their new Pixel series, no, but anything before that, I've had to umbrella those also. So like, it's really prevalent that Sony fixed a heat problem that no one else was able to fix. Canon with this here, I believe, has done it. This summer I'm going to rent this one and the C80 and the C50 when we do one of our peer shoots, and I'm just going to put them out there. They're not going to be part of the actual shoot itself, and I'll stick with my Sonys because I can't afford to have anything fail. But I'm going to put them out there. We're going to start our stream for those at probably 10 a.m. and it's going to have both cameras streaming. I'm going to have both cameras going to external monitors, pushing out either a 4K or a 6K raw signal out to Atmoses. And then from there, we're going to also put a signal out to the video switcher. And we're going to live stream those cameras on another stream, and we're going to run them for 8 hours straight. Now, this is how I torture test the FX series cameras. And it's going to put in about, I'm going to wait till it's a 90-degree day or something like that, and I'm not going to tint them. And I know the Atmos monitors won't overheat, so I'm not worried about that. They got a great fan system. I want to see if these are going to overheat. And I'm not talking like the regular overheat where I shot for 2 hours and I'm a YouTuber. No, I'm talking like I'm doing production. I've got monitors on this. I'm recording externally. I'm putting raw signal out. From that raw signal, I'm going to do a process that goes through the Atmos, and then we're going to get the process signal out to the live stream. And then we're going to really just push this as far as we can. And if they survive the torture rack test, I'm going to start advising these as for those who are Canon shooters that they should buy these, because switching from systems from Sony to Canon sucks. Now, I mean, if you're going to go from this to this brands, and you're trying to do video exposure, you're trying to get your LUTs on the right, you're trying to deliver something to a client that's the correct delivery item, you need to stay in an ecosystem. Not because one's better or worse, it's just one you're trained well in. There's very few people that I know, and most of them become production managers or they become producers, who can run any camera. They say it's a camera. I don't care. It's got an iris, it's got a exposure index, and it's got shutter angle. I can shoot it. Makes no difference to me. I don't care what the codex is. Throw me a LUT. I'll get as close as I can to where it need to be. Give me a histogram. I'll figure out where it needs to be in the histogram. Give me false color. I'll get the tones where we're trying to work on, or we'll get the exposure right for the object we're working with. That's it. But most people aren't like that. Most people aren't, most people have spent time in an ecosystem. So if you have Canon, it's really nice to be able to have this and know you can workhorse them. And that's also another big important thing. I want these to succeed, because there's going to be a time when I'm going to build out 2 podcast studios next year. And one's going to be a Sony one, one's going to be a Canon one. The Canon one is most likely going to be C50s all the way across the board. The Sony one, oddly enough, will be FX2s, because I know they're never going to die. I mean, I could turn an FX2 on and run a thing for 10 hours straight. How I know this is because if I can run an A7 IV by putting an external fan on it and run set up an interview station that has Ninja Atmos connected to them, pushing out 4K 60 and recording 4K 60 all intro all day long, and just leaving the stinking camera on, and it doesn't overheat, it just goes because I put a little fan on it. A well-built fan system in an FX2, that thing's never going to die, and the video quality is going to be great. And it's going to be sampled down from either a 6K or 7K sensor. Same going over to a C50. If I can get the same result when I'm doing interviews, I'm doing a podcast, I'm not going to care if it's Super 35 or if it's, they're going to be 4K 30s. We're not going to do 4K 60s, so they're both going to be full frame. They're both going to be putting out great looks. This has got a fast reading sensor, so it might look better when there's motion, but then again, people do like a little bit of motion blur. They're both going to come out excellently. If they come up with a better camera than the FX2 and they give me an FX4, which is I'm hoping they'll do just an FX4, take the sensor from the new the Sony 5 and put it in an FX body and call it an FX4, I would be done. But then again, I would compete against this, and that's probably what's going to happen. If they do that, then we got like an FX30, an FX2, FX3, FX4, FX6. So, and then we got Canon over here with the C50, the C70, the C50, and the C80. We're going to have the ability to set up multiple studios. Those who prefer Canon, those who prefer Sony, will have 2 studios. Here you go. That's the plan. Part of it's actually a 3-way plan. I'd love to have it where I had a Blackmagic studio, a Canon studio, and a Sony studio. And when you look at that, imagine this. We're having these discussions. We're having the discussion of we could have a Sony studio, a Canon studio, Blackmagic studio with these cameras. have all intro recording, thank you Canon, raw recording, thank you Canon, full cinema lenses, thank you Canon, and it will force both them to evolve, meaning Sony and Blackmagic. Blackmagic is evolving with the L mount. Sony was going to have to start releasing stuff. Now, Sony's still in kind of a bind. But a lot of people don't realize is Sony is kind of stuck because they have a Super 35 global shutter sensor that they put in a $66,000 camera that has really good dynamic range. It is great for broadcast and it's beautiful. Problem is, it's a $66,000 camera. How do you justify taking that sensor and dropping it into an FX30 type body? So right now, Canon needs to take advantage of this. Lumix needs to take advantage of this. Because I guarantee you in 2 years or less, Sony is going to say, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to eat it with the contracts I got with NFL and NHL and everything. And I'm going to drop that global shutter in the FX series body. It will be the FX30 Mark II. And we're going to also do a full frame version of that. And it's going to be killer. So right now, Canon needs to take advantage of this. They really need to pump as many of these out so they have them in as many hands as they can and as quick as they can with as many promos as they can. Now, the price on the C50, this is just, I got to admit, mind-blowing for what you get. So let me look this up real quick. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you. C50 price. $3,900. It's worth it. And that's just a fact. It is absolutely worth it. You can't go wrong with this camera at that price. You're getting so much for so little. And let's look at some specs here. For all of those who are Panasonic loving people who love the Panasonic cameras, I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes just talking about where Canon has just beat you into the ground with this camera. Let's see, this will give me the specs here. Finding specs on Canon cameras has never been easy, just so y'all know. It's always, they make you download a PDF sheet to actually get all your answers. So I want to jump over here. I'm literally looking at the PDF for their specs. And I'm not a spec hog. I just like making sure I give real answers. So here is something that is going to kind of set Canon apart in the C50, even from the S1 II. Though it does not have a 60 frames per second open gate at 7K, it does have an all intra, and it's a raw ST. So it's not an HQ version, but it's an ST version, and you get not 200 megabits per second, which is what you get out of the Lumix, which is really good in the 265, surprisingly. Not the greatest, but at least it's good. You're getting 1,500 megabits per second at 25 frames per second. You're getting, at 29.9, 1,800 megabits per second. That means it's writing 200 plus megabytes per second to the card. You need a blazing fast card. Tons of data. You'll be able to get color like you would not believe. It's so much better. And then, where is the other one? They have another 3.2. The high efficiency version, which is a 10-bit. Now here's where they also beat the living shit out of the Lumix S1 II. If you go to a .265, you are getting a 3.2 open gate at 10-bit 422, 6912 by 4608 at 29.9, you're looking at 2997 or 30 frames per second. You're looking at 1600 megabits per second. It's 200 megabytes of writing per second. That's a lot of data. So the colors you're going to get are so much better. Or at 25, you're looking at 1305, which is like 150, 165. So you got way more data to work with. And the high efficiency. So that's the Canon just beat up Lumix just like that. The only thing they don't have is the 60 frames per second. And frankly put, I wish they did, because that would just shut up the whole discussion. So, I mean, that's the one thing that kind of gets me. They also have a better high ISO. They have a better start point on the low ISO. They have a better workaround in your ISO options when it comes to PQ, HLG, B.709, and wide dynamic range. You're looking at 400 ISO and 3200 ISO, which really gives you a lot more flexibility. And this even beats the shit out of Sony, by the way. This just kicks Sony's ass when it comes to this. And then when you're talking to standard, you're looking at, I'll take it back. The FX6 does match up with this, but the FX3 does not, this is a direct competitor with the FX3. When you're looking at just regular standard 709, this beats the living crap out of Lumix and Sony. You're looking at 160 ISO and 1200 ISO. That makes a huge, huge difference. What's another thing we got going on here? There is no, now this is the one thing, there is no 60 frames per second in any flavor of the RAW or the RAW light on the open gate. But your rates are here. You can do a 29.9, you can do 23 frames per second, which is going to be, let me give you some of the data things on this. You're looking at 1800 megabits per second at 30 frames per second. You're looking at 1440 megabits per second at the 24 frames per second or 23.9. If you go to the light RAW, you're going to be at 1170 megabits per second, and you're going to be 936 megabits. This is way, way better than the Lumix. So if you're looking at the Lumix right now, if you are looking at the Lumix, so we're going to kick Sony off this discussion real quick. If you're looking at the Lumix S1 IIs, don't buy it. Spend $1,000 more. Spend $1,000 more and buy the Canon. Yes, you do lose the 60 frames per second. I don't care about the 60 frames per second, because most of the times when we're going to be doing this, there's going to be interview sessions, there's going to be basic visuals. You're not going to need that 60 frames per second. For those who absolutely have to have the 60 frames per second, and you want it all intro, and you want to be in the professional end of it, you're still stuck at 3.3K, not 6K in the Lumix. So this is where the Canon comes in great. Canon also has, I wanted to pull up the other 3x2, which is high efficiency. So the 3x2 ratios, you're also looking at, if you go into the high efficiency, and here's the other thing that's really cool. Now, Canon is doing this in a way that really makes me happy. If you're in a high efficiency .265, you get the option of all intro or long dot. You're not getting that in the Lumix, in the open gate. So Canon just destroyed the open gate for everybody. And for those out there who are the Lumix fans, cool, I'm happy for you. The money you spent on that, magnificent. Canon's won that argument too. And it's going to force a hand of Sony. It's going to force a hand of Lumix, really, it's coming up a year, because they're going to have to come up with an all intro. Or people are going to finally realize that, Canon's got better footage. Now, that being said, love to have any questions you guys have. Appreciate the likes and those who have watched. This is my little discussion on the Canon cameras. I believe they have come up with a great alternative to Sony after 5 years. I will stick with Sony because I'm already embedded in the Sony lineup, and I got a good idea where they're going next. But if they don't do it in the next couple of years, and it's time for me to do a whole new setup, or if an opportunity presents itself and the funding's there, we can just go ahead and completely redo the lineup, which would be the 24 to 105 f2s in this. Love to get 3 of these. That would be done. You know, still keep the stuff I got now because they work really well. But if there's an upgrade path and we've got the right sponsorships and right everything for that, or we get the right revenue for the year, yeah, I might just switch all the way over to this because everything I see on paper looks great. I need to rent them, make sure they work good. If they do, I got no problem switching over because, frankly put, great cameras. I'm gonna give Sony 2 more years. They don't fix it, or this year they don't fix it. I'm looking at that too. I can't believe I'd say I want to change from Sony, but hey, for commercial work, being able to put out the best work, these workhorses. All right, it's been 30 minutes. I got to get ready to go out to a shoot. And y'all have a magnificent day. Any questions you have on this, just throw it in the comments. I'll come back to it later and reply to them. Peace.